Today's conversation is about how labor is shaping tomorrow's farm. With us today, we have three amazing panelists, and I have to say that to me this is an interesting topic because I grew up hearing stories about labor shortage when I was working alongside my parents, and today it's a reality. With us today, we have Brian Antle, President of Plant Tape USA, previously was Vice President of Harvesting for Tanimer and Antle. We have Dan Steers, co-founder and CEO of Abundant Robotics. And we also have Javier Zamora, owner of JSM Organics. Gentlemen, we're going to jump right into this. They each bring a different perspective to this conversation. Javier as a small farmer, Dan as a tech innovator, Brian as an individual who's worked with the labor force. Can we start off by having a just candid, direct conversation around what's the significant factor that's impacting today's labor shortage? Anybody?
I think it's really no big secret to what's leading to the labor shortage. I mean, we have a huge need for labor in not only in our area, but in the industry in general. And, we're faced with a labor force that's reaching retirement age and aging out of the age when they can work. So as they age out, their next generation, rightfully so, they've encouraged to obtain higher education or, go to school, take a different career path. So we don't have any of their next generation coming in behind, and now we've shut the door to the border that provided the majority of our labor in the past. So I think all three of those things combine to the problems we're facing now.
Javier, do you think that's driven in part too by the immigration crackdown, or maybe lack of talent, or maybe people in the millennium category not interested in this kind of work?
Well, thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be here. It's great to see some smart people and people all dressed up, and me coming in with my boots, and I just came out of the field, so it's just about 20 minutes away. So don't expect me to wear a tie or be super fluent about the language and all this other stuff, but I'm just going to tell you what I'm going through as a small grower. I'm a small grower. I do mainly strawberries, vegetables, and a few flowers, all certified organic. The issues that we're having with labor, probably not me personally because I'm small. I mean, I have a labor force of 26 people, but people around me, other growers that are obviously larger with the 5,000 acres, the people are just not there yet. And there's a lot of fear of the ones that are around, just moving around, not being able to go out with their families to, their city, or San Jose, or go down south to Santa Maria, because things are really scary for them. So we feel that. So the ones that are here are just not enough for what we need to harvest. That's just all this political instability has made our region suffer a lot when it comes to who's harvesting the food that we eat, that we need to grow. So I think something needs to be done. I'm not a political figure, but I think people need to realize that this is a reality that we're facing, and eventually they need to really go down to earth, and this is what they're going to be facing later on when they start paying a little more money for the vegetables and fruits that they eat. So.
Dan, you bring a technology perspective to this discussion. Automation can have a negative connotation. I mean, what's your take on this?
Well, so the first take I would have is that automation is finally becoming possible for a lot of the crops that consume large amounts of labor. We're focused on picking apples. Just kind of a little history for the apple industry. Our team had some grant funding early on from the Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission. It's a subsidiary of the Washington Apple Commission. The Research Commission was founded in the late 1960s, and the #1 objective at the time of founding was to come up with a solution for automated harvest. because of concerns about labor and just labor intensity of orchard agriculture. The best engineers in the world could not have designed an automated harvester in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, or even in the early 2000s. There are finally sort of underlying technologies that let us start to address some of these kinds of problems because they're just really hard technical problems. So when people ask me about labor, I think I'm continuing a tradition of automation that's made agriculture progressively more efficient for a couple of hundred years. And it's just that the underlying technologies now let us address sort of parts of agriculture we couldn't before. It's really not related to this year's situation as labor that really are kind of affecting everybody else's businesses.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll help you, David.
Got a drone on there.
Want me to talk about technology? And what they need to do?
So with that, Javier, I mean, are you using any technology?
Just my cell phone, just to FaceTime my customers so they know what I have so they can buy it and pay me the most money out of it. So I can pay my guys what I pay them. Believe me, I pay my guys really well. I got workers making more money than I make. And that's something that we as employers should start paying a little more attention to that. I think those people deserve to make more than $12, $14 an hour. They deserve a lot. But anyway, technology, I don't know how many Silicon kids are here. You guys need to do something that will help overcome these labor issues. I know you guys are working on certain things to harvest strawberries and apples. It's good to hear that. I think apples were probably closer to achieve that goal. Strawberries is gonna be really, really difficult. I'll tell you, I probably will not see that myself, or I don't know how many of you will see that in your lifetime. Because the ones that know how we harvest strawberries, there's so many decisions that are made when you're picking those strawberries to decide which one to pick, which one goes in the farrow, which one goes in the canister for juice, and which one goes the one for fresh market. So the technology is not there yet. And when it comes there, it's gonna be kind of slow. And you have to be very precise, the way that we plant lettuce and all those other things. But we all know that in Watsonville and that area, it's nothing but hills, and the land is very uneven. So to cultivate strawberries the way we cultivate broccoli and lettuce here in Salinas, it's just gonna be a little more challenging. I hope it happens. I hope many things happen. I hope many politicians and people get what the reality is, and we get the kids that put a lot of effort into creating something that will help us achieve the goals of producing the food we need to eat. Just like the way you guys invest a lot of technology in making the newest iPhone that is not gonna feed you but take the money away from your pocket. But, right? But maybe in the medical field there is a lot of changes and a lot of innovations. So we need to have those kids come out here and see my booths and see what we go through in order to make something happen. Because otherwise, you won't be able to eat, and you won't be healthy to create your newest Apple TV or whatever it is. So, sorry, I'm just a real guy.
No, thank you, Javier. We encouraged every panelist to be candid, and Javier's middle name is Candid. But you bring up a good point, Javier, and I want to shift it over here to Brian from a labor and then technology perspective and how you balance. You talked about strawberries. You deal with more vegetables, Brian. Your previous job was to oversee harvesting operations and people and making sure you had enough people to harvest the crop. Now you've shifted to a different role where there's more technology being used. I'd like to hear your perspective between balancing those two pieces.
Yeah, and it is a balance of, what's feasible and what you can do and what's still a dream. I mean, if you look at the industry now, I mean, we have automated machines to thin lettuce. We can weed lettuce, we can plant our crops all through automation. You know, even when you get into the harvesting side of it, I mean, you know, the physical act of cutting the produce, that's not hard. I mean, there's plenty of machines that'll do that. But it's how do you replace the person that has to pick up that head and know what size it is, know how dense it should be, peel the delicate leaves off it, you know, decide what box it should go in, wrap it in a bag, tape it, you know, make it presentable to the store. You know, that's the hardest piece right now that, you know, I've seen a lot of things, but nobody's really close, I don't think, to getting to that side of it. I think we've made a lot of progress from planting to cutting, but it kind of stops at cutting, right? There's nothing really yet to replace the skilled labor of the guys and gals that are out in the field packing the product. You know, there is equipment that exists that can do it, but as soon as you tell them you want to weld it onto a moving machine and put it out in a field, and it's going to get rained on and work 24 hours a day and get banged around every day, that it's not quite there yet.
Brian, I'm curious. You've been in agriculture for a number of years now. What percentage of your labor force has been replaced with technology that you are currently using or your business is currently using, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put a number to it, and I'm always quick to say we're not eliminating jobs, right? We're just replacing jobs that nobody's coming for anymore, right? You can't find people that want to thin lettuce. You can't find people that just want to hoe acres and acres of weeds all summer. So those are the jobs, you know, that we're replacing and filling. But to put a number to it, I mean, on the harvest side for us, it's still relatively zero. I mean, as far as automated, we've made advances in the efficiency of machines to make people more efficient in how they work and to need less people working on those machines. But I think we're in the infancy of really putting this, the technology like transplanters, weeders, thinning machines. We're kind of in the infancy of putting them to work and feeling comfortable with them doing commercial acreage size work. So, I mean, it's hard to put a number. I mean, it'd be small at this point.
No, that's fair. So because technology, there is a delay, and I think you mentioned that, Dan, that there is a delay in technology for certain crops, right?
Yeah.
And so while we wait for that to catch up, we have a labor shortage, and because of the labor shortage, we have pressure on wages going up, right? So as labor cost is rising, margins are shrinking. Do we think that raising wages is going to solve the labor shortage?
Well, I'd say these guys are certainly better than me to answer that. But I would tell you, though, from somebody who works in technology, just kind of, maybe it's repetitive what I said before, most of the problem in automating, kind of bringing automation to the type of agriculture that happens around here and certainly happens in orchards in Washington State or New York, Michigan, isn't related to the wage that the automation's competing with. It's related to whether or not the automation can do that task at all. It's exactly like Brian was just saying. If you need automation to handle a head of lettuce the way he's describing, some of that manipulation is a really hard problem. And what I expect to see is that over the next, say, 3 to 5, 10 years, a lot of that manipulation is going to become possible. And it won't be sort of a general purpose thing that rolls across every one of these sectors at the same time. It'll be specific aspects of different production systems that get automated. But the pace at which we can do things like use computer vision to identify fine details and use different types of manipulation effectively, that pace of progress is increasing pretty quickly. So I think you're going to see a lot of significant impact over a 5 to 10 year time frame. In 2 years, not so much.
Javier, any thoughts?
Of course. course I have thoughts about everything, because this is me, it's real. I face reality. Maybe not when it comes to my teenage kids and all that, that's a whole different issue, but we all know that, what I'm talking about. Raising or paying people a lot of money is not going to be sustainable. It's not. What we need to do, or what I'm doing, is to keep the ones that are already here and are working for me. Of course I have to pay them really well, so otherwise I'm going to have to downsize. So paying everybody a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean we're going to solve the labor issues. I think we need to change. That's kind of like a short-term solution. Pay them well so the ones that are here are not being cannibalized with the next grower. So they don't go and work for Mr. Smith instead of working for Mr. Zamora today, or go and work for Mr. Johnson the next day. Because that's what they're doing. You know, in the strawberry field, 20 people are working here today. Tomorrow somebody else offers them an extra 25 cents per box, and they will wake up next somewhere else. That's real life. And you guys know what I'm talking about. I think we need to look at the future. I think the future is if only in Watsonville and the coastal area we can only grow strawberries, so we need to start thinking about the way we grow strawberries and encourage other people from the city to come in and participate. I know the big guys are coming up with new ways of maybe growing strawberries up here instead of down here. That's really good. That's thinking forward. So I think we need to get people involved like that and thinking forward on how this thing is going to be sustainable in the future. So not just trying to patch things right now and then not, or becoming a repetitive issue every 5-10 years, right? So that's kind of my thought.
I'm going to switch here a little bit and kind of come back. Well, it's really going to be for all of you, but, and you mentioned this in one of our conversations, Dan, earlier, where you brought up technology being developed in a vacuum, right? And so how do farmers like Javier, like Brian, work with technology people to develop something that works?
Yeah, well, there's this old saying in technology, you know, you've got a technology in search of a problem. That usually doesn't end well. You know, the history, our team were a group of researchers in a robotics lab, reached out to the US Apple industry. And I mentioned the Washington Tree Root Research Commission, industry-funded body, commissioners are from the Apple industry, and that began a really helpful collaboration because you had researchers, engineers working really closely every step of the way with you know, kind of growers. There's got to be that type of collaboration, and I don't think it's unique to agriculture. It really, if you're trying to make any sort of new product, doing that without being in the middle, just immersed in the problem you're trying to solve, isn't going to be very helpful. I would just encourage growers that are interested, you know, when you're talking about new strategies for growing strawberries, if you put yourself out there, I bet you'll find a receptive audience of technologists that are really eager to learn from you, right? And if you start working together in that spirit and you find people who are grounded in, you know, not so much telling you how they're going to solve your problem, but asking you lots of questions and then coming back and showing you stuff that looks like a step in the right direction, that's probably the right spirit.
Javier?
Something came up last year when a couple of high school kids came up to me during summertime, and one of them was really, really sharp, and he's going to be a computer programmer, and he was telling me, you know, Javier, he would call me Mr. Zamora, very educated kid, and he goes, Mr. Zamora, I go, I don't know how computers work. He goes, well, you tell the computer, if this happens, you do this. And if this doesn't happen, you go this, and all this chain of commands. I'm like, crap. If we get technology involved, and I tell you, strawberries grow this way because this is the way I grow them, but we could probably do it in this area. You design these little pyramids or whatever, and then you get your robotics thing, and they see a green strawberry, do this. If that green strawberry it's deformed by lagas or something, do this something else. oh, if this strawberry is too soft, or the temperature is this, you do this, all these things. I know that technology can be created. I mean, we're humans, we're super smart, and we're very stupid too, but that can be done. It's just what you're saying. You know, put yourself out there and see who's gonna get, oh, this guy is loud, but he's making sense, and then we'll try to create something. I could be over there harvesting berries with my guys, and I mean, I got people working right now that are making a lot of money that I don't have. Instead of being here talking to you, but to me, it's really important that this could be sustainable, and I give something back to that community, just to be sustainable so we know what's going on. That's why I'm here. It's not that I want to become a millionaire or drive a Tesla. No, I'm not taking that with me when I'm dying, I'll tell you that. So that's my 2 centavos para todos ustedes.
What Dan said really resonated with me. We need to be asking questions, and we need to be putting ourselves out there, as Javier was sharing. With a few minutes left, I'd like to ask the audience who wants to put themselves out there and ask a question to our wonderful panelists.
Well, you don't think we're wonderful? Come on. You must have a question.
I'm interested in how proprietorship comes into play between the farmer, the farmer's group, and the technologist. Because if a farmer and a technologist comes up with a great product for harvesting, then whose proprietary item is this?
I think we need to go beyond that. We need to stop being selfish if we want to make this sustainable. I know there's companies out there and we all want to have something that nobody else has. But I think in order to make this and find a solution to this, we got to go beyond the selfishness and really work as a group to make something happen, to make a change. It's okay. It's America. You have to make a lot of money because money makes you and elevates your ego and makes the society think that you are greater than some other people. We need to go beyond that.
Javier, I appreciate your comment. Ma'am, and thank you for your question. I'd like to get Brian's perspective on that question and then also Dan's perspective, because you have developed technology as a farmer. How do you work through that?
Yeah, I think Javier hit the nail on the head. I mean, we do all need to work together. I think the strawberry industry is a good example of what they've done with some of the harvest technology on strawberries, where people are working together as an industry to solve a problem. And I think you'll see that happen in the vegetables at some point once something comes along that'll work. I mean, if you look at what we're using nowadays, nobody has anything that they solely use. I mean, right? The harvest machines we use now, at one point somebody built the first one, and now, they're all not identical, but they're all very similar. Vacuum cooling's another thing that it's now an industry standard, but at one point somebody came up with it and had the advantage of it, but chose not to keep the advantage and to use it for the industry. So I think you'll see the same thing happen with harvesting. I don't think, nothing has come along yet that I think the whole industry can get behind and jump on board to develop.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Dan?
there really hasn't been that sort of conflicting dynamic. Growers have been very supportive of what we've done really early on, and in fact donated a lot of time and energy to not only give us input, let us work in their orchards. There's been more of a push to say, hey, let me check you guys out to see if you can really come solve a problem that matters to me. And for us, over several years of showing them that we're actually making progress on doing something useful to them means they've been willing to sort of help us even more. That's been much more the spirit of any questions of who might own one thing or another. The other thing that's interesting, and this sort of came up at dinner last night, so the segment that I'm immersed in is apples. And when I'm working with apple growers, it's really interesting to me to see how they just have a culture of comparing notes and sharing between themselves. And so, you know, for them to think about how they would pull us into that's been pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Question in the back?
Could you address the need for education and where education is going for your workers and where it ties into the new innovation?
Education is obviously really good, and it's something that we can never underestimate. I'll tell you my story, or some of you might already know it. So I came from Mexico at the age of 20, spoke very little English. I still don't, I'm still working at it, but español se las doy por la cabeza. Chingón. I lived in LA for 20 years and learned about America. It wasn't until I was 44 years old and I came up north again and started farming and went and got my GED at the age of 44, and then I went to college. For me, yeah, go ahead, chingón, it's good. Education has taken me to another level, to the level where I feel comfortable being up here talking to you guys and not being afraid and not peeing my pants. That's when it happens to me before. A lot of people have that issue, but that's personal. But so educating yourself, it must. Now I understand the science behind the plants and nutrients and all these other things versus just my physical practice and what I thought I knew about all these things. So education makes a big difference in this world. If we educate ourselves, we're going to be better off. Yes, some people are really educated and still don't get what the hell's going on in real life, but that's a whole different issue, right? So, you must be educado, número uno. Hard work too, and discipline.
Brian, do you want to address that question?
Yeah, I think you know, our workers of tomorrow aren't the workers of today, like we talked about the other day. I mean, you know, the guys working in our shops today are primarily, you know, screwdrivers and wrenches, but all the equipment we're getting now and bringing to the ranches, you know, screwdrivers and wrenches don't apply anymore. It's, you know, a Wi-Fi signal and a scanning computer, something to troubleshoot everything. So we're looking for an entirely different pool of workers. I mean, from the guys all the way on the farm to the people in the office. I mean, technology is such a big part of what we're all doing now, and you know, you're doing everything from a phone and an iPad now, and nobody talks anymore. Everybody sends emails back and forth, and so it's truly a different worker we're looking for now. You know, the skills of yesterday, they'll still apply, but they're not going to be the primarily skills of tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a great example of that. I was talking with an apple grower over the winter. They were doing their winter pruning, and he was scratching his head trying to figure out the best way to teach his field foreman, to properly prepare bud samples for a microscope so they could do the right bud counts for a more precise pruning regimen that they're working through. You know, I don't think anybody was looking at specimen preparation for the microscope, you know, in their field foreman skills, you know, 10 years ago. And I think there's only going to be more and more of that.
Right. We have a minute left. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the comments. I have one question that I'd like to ask that I think that our audience here would appreciate. How do we get farmers that are risk adverse to adopt new technology?
So I'm not sure. So it's funny. Outside of agriculture, there's this reputation that farmers are risk averse. I don't think they're actually any different than any other population of business people. So one, if you're going to survive as a farmer, you're going to be a really good business person. We were talking about that beforehand. You know, a lot of what I learned about business was from my grandfather, watching him do the administrative part of running a family farm. And what you need to do is simply show them you're going to do something useful and you're going to deliver that value quickly. It's not so different than convincing, you know, a marketing person in a Fortune 500 company that you're going to help them spend their marketing budget more efficiently. So I think the real thing is bring something useful and show them quickly how it's going to help them.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank everybody for this session. Thank you.
Thank you.